Well, if you're a big fan of this look right here, the good news is it's coming back. Oh, Matthew Stafford. You like that? Matthew and Company. I don't think this is about honoring anything, but the dogs are going back to a square numeral for their numbers. And this was announced on Thursday, and we're talking about it today. It's something I can talk about a lot. Um, there's reasons why. This is from 2007. This is the Auburn, Georgia blackout game. The first time dogs wore black since I believe the 40s at that point, and it, of course, was a magical moment in Georgia history, beating Auburn, going away at the end. Now, this is not like it was similar to what happened in the national championship game. The only reason I bring up DAWGSTRUCTION right here is the easiest way to look at the difference. If you can see Keeley's number there, that font, what's called a font, for the numeral, is different than what Matthew has on, and so the seven squared off rather than, I don't know if I got a seven in here in this book or not, but the curve of there's a 17 from N'Kobe Dean. As you can see, it's a slightly different seven. And a lot of people are really reacting to this. Now, look, is this a big deal? I'm not sure about that, but it is something that's happening in the off season. So, of course, we have to talk about it. And, let me give you the brief history of Georgia's uniforms from let's just say 1980, okay? For a long time, Georgia wore red tops, red helmets, red tops, and white breeches. In the 1980s, the silver breeches were brought back for home games, and they wore silver breeches from 1980 until today as the traditional bottoms. That's how long it's been going on. So for 41 years. But in that time, particularly when Vince was still the head coach, you still had uh, white pants. That was not abnormal. And occasionally there would be red pants, which are disgusting. Now, Herschel Walker, of course, we've talked about it a long time while doing this. And one of the biggest moments, the arrival of Herschel Walker occurred not when he was in silver breeches, but when he was in white bottoms, and that was when he ran over Bill Bates. Georgia comes back to win the game up at Tennessee. Herschel's a legend. A week later, I believe it was Texas A&M that they played in Athens and won 42-0, or whatever the score was, or whoever the opponent was. And from that moment on, because probably they won the national championship, the silver breeches are sort of here to stay. There have been a few times, and I'm going off memory here, where Georgia has worn alternate pants. Uh, in 1998, the Outback Bowl of the 97 season, Georgia wore black pants against Wisconsin with white tops and red helmets, ran all over them, won 33-6. Going off memory, the score might not be exactly correct. And that game was in Tampa over Ron Dayne in Wisconsin. A season later, Georgia made the disastrous decision to go with red tops, black bottoms, and got run over by the Gators in Jacksonville. That was Kirby was a captain for that game, so there's a couple of images of him in that game. It's just too many primary colors, red and black. It's just too much. Um, in 1999, a season later, Georgia, because of the death of an assistant coach, wore white pants against LSU and then wore them against Tennessee. Soon thereafter, I don't know when, but those white pants just were not worn again. Um, there was also a time in the 1980s when Georgia played Clemson uh, and South Carolina for some reason. Georgia would occasionally wear red bottoms on the road. And I don't know why at South Carolina, But it's in 1988, Vince Dooley, the coach at the time in his final season, wore red pants, and they had not been worn for a long, long time. And the reason why is because they went over to Carolina and got their skulls kicked in by South Carolina in a non-SEC game. But that was it for that. For a while. I mean, because you got to remember, Vince was the athletic director in 2000 until 2003. He wouldn't have let them wear those pants. I'm assuming that. And then, of course, the I think the reason why they wore them at Clemson was because Clemson would wear for big games, and they still do this. They would wear orange pants, and so Vince was like, "Well, we're going to wear red pants. You know, take that." That's my understanding of that. Someone can correct me on that, but you know, now still Clemson wears all orange or orange bottoms when they play for championships. So they didn't get a chance to play it this past year because they didn't. They never had the ability to play for the division championship, and therefore did not have the chance to play for the ACC championship and beyond. So some people do funny things with their jerseys. Um, this is an I'll go into more detail at some stage, but for a long time Georgia didn't change their uniform at all. Essentially for 7 years there was no real change. There was minor change. Mark Richt, when he came on board, he got rid of this black stripe and went to the traditional white stripe, but the stripe was not thin like it was in the 90s when Kirby's at the beginning of Kirby's time when Robert Edwards in 1995 was running all three people. The white stripe was about the width of this black stripe. I don't know why Jim put this in there, but when Mark came back, he got rid of the black stripe, but left the white stripe pretty broad. And you still see here, uh, when you compare the stripes, what Bama does, I'm like a weatherman with this. What Bama's got and what Georgia's got, it is a slightly thicker stripe that the Dogs use versus what Alabama uses, but it is going back towards the time when Georgia had the thinner stripe, a more attractive helmet in my view. But sort of the most famous time that Georgia switched jerseys was 1980. And then after that was the 2007 season when they, of course, wore the black tops that I had on earlier that Matthew Stafford had on. And the very quick story about that was it was in the spring of 2007. I was waiting around. I don't know why I was I just describe this place that nobody has already seen. It's been remodeled since, but I was in the old weight room, walked outside. Mark Richt and I were just sitting there talking for a moment. And I don't know if he would remember this conversation or not, but I said, why don't you, have you ever thought about changing the jerseys at all? And his comment to that is, I just, I want when people see us play on TV, I want them to know that it's Georgia. And, Georgia's got such distinctive colors and marks that it's hard to suggest that you wouldn't know it's Georgia. And I don't know, but at that time, because this was somewhere around April, maybe in May, that he would have had to have already ordered those jerseys from Nike or would have had to have known to put the order in. And of course, and I'll tell this story some other time, that group wore black tops twice that season, once against Auburn in what was a huge moment in Georgia history, the blackout. And then, of course, in a Sugar Bowl win. And then let's not act like Sugar Bowl wins are not a big deal because they are. Georgia, in its time, doesn't exactly just trip over Sugar Bowl trophies in Butts Mere. So those two were big, big moments. But going back, I've told you some of the history of Georgia football uniforms. I legitimately could talk about this for an hour. I will spare you all that. But moving back to the block letters, block numbers, I don't think the font I would not go away from if I were Georgia. That was an expensive font, I'm sure. But they, for whatever reason, have decided to go back to these block jerseys. I do wonder what our friends at Red Zone think about this on Clayton Street. They're a retailer. They have a pile of jerseys, and I've not reached out to talk to Scott or Mindy about this, but I do wonder, because they're going to have inventory of what I would call national championship jerseys that they have in place. Could this be an NIL deal where now Georgia can market, hey, we've got new jerseys, and now the guys can go out and sell the jerseys? I don't know, but they've gone back to the what I would call 2000s jerseys with David Green, David Pollock, etc. Made famous, if you want to call it that. I would have stuck with this jersey that Georgia has now. That's me. But anyway, if you want to pick up Dog Struction, the link's down below. Thanks for listening and watching.